And we're live. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We are here with Summer Sinijlawi. He is a Palestinian political activist. Summer is somebody who I've been following on Twitter for a few months now, and I've always appreciated his work. We had the opportunity to actually meet in person 2 weeks ago in Hamburg, Germany, for under an organization called Minds of Peace, which hosts these public negotiations. We were both part of the negotiations, so it was great to get to know Summer better there. And when I was there, I said I'd love to bring you on for a live stream and a conversation with the community. So here we are. Summer, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Adar. It's a pleasure.
So I remember when we were speaking, one thing I understood from you is that you and the PA are not on great terms these days. Can you explain more about that?
Well, Adar, I come from the mainstream politics in Palestine. I'm a Fatah guy since I was 14 years old. And Fatah is the main political party. It's the political party that is controlling the PLO and the PA. But I am from the opposition part of Fatah. So I am a critique to the current leadership. And sometimes it's misleading when you use the term opposition. It gives you the impression usual oppositions are minority. In our case, opposition is the majority. In the last polls, I mean for the last 10 years, the polls showed that 90% of the Palestinians are requesting from President Abbas to resign and leave the political life. He's 90 years old. I was meeting him when I was 20 years old, 21 years old. That is, 30 something years ago. I was the head of the Fatah Youth. And he was part of the Central Committee of Fatah. He was number 2 in PLO and Fatah. Just to explain a little bit to the audience, we didn't have a power change since 1965. Fatah came and controlled the PLO. The PLO became the sole representative of the Palestinian people. And it was Arafat and Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, the current president, who were leading since 1965. We didn't have a power change. Until now, the leadership, it's the same. So when I was meeting him, he always ended these meetings with us, the young leaders of Fatah, by saying, you are the leaders of tomorrow. This tomorrow for 35 years since then didn't come. He has been elected 20 years ago for a term of 4 years, and he continued to self-employ himself until now, and he controls everything in our life, everything. It's easy for me to be, part of that system and enjoy the privileges and enter into this circuit of benefits. There is a bubble of 100 people who are enjoying lots of privileges because they achieved their independence long time ago. It's easy for me to be part of that group. But you cannot claim the agency of representing all the problems of the Palestinians and their collective rights and their struggle for freedom and their request for independence, and at the same time be a layer of oppression over the Palestinian people. We need to respect the individual rights of the Palestinians. We need to respect democracy. We need to respect the right to choose. We need to respect that our Palestinian people needs to be democratic and needs to have a say every 4 years on who's going to lead and represent them. So that's why I am part of that group of Palestinians inside the Fatah that is requesting for the reforms, requesting for accountability, for transparency, requesting that we start establishing our democratic institute. And it starts inside Fatah. Fatah needs to be a democratic party, a liberal democratic party. If not, then we can be something like Hamas, except not having beards. So we need to identify ourselves in a way that shows that we are different, that shows we have a vision towards the future. Statehood needs to be built. Statehood cannot be begged by the others. I cannot only, run from one place to another asking for recognition of the Palestinian state. I need to prove it. I need to build it. I need to act as a state. And I need to prove that I am capable to run a democratic society. And this part of democratization, it will have its impacts on the dynamics of relations with the Israelis, because when you become democratic, people will respect your choice. Until now, some Israelis have the impression that, all Gazans have voted to Hamas and all Gazans have chosen Hamas and Hamas is their choice, which is not correct. But the current leadership did not allow elections for 20 years. And everybody is giving, a way to the assumption that, what was voted in 2006 continues to be valid. And this is not correct. Currently, the Palestinians are fed up from the regime of Hamas in Gaza, which, also came to power in 2006, and the regime of Abbas in the West Bank. One brought upon us destruction in Gaza, and the other brought upon us corruption in the West Bank. And we are fed up. None of these regimes is representing us. I am a Fatah guy, but this is not Fatah that I have envisioned when I was voluntarily recruiting myself to Fatah at the age of 14. And I spent 5 years in jail because I was a member of Fatah. And I spent my life representing Fatah as the international secretary of the Fatah Youth, as the head of the Fatah Youth, as the coordinator of the Israeli and international file for the Fatah Supreme Committee. I am belonging to Fatah, but this is not the Fatah that I envisioned. This is a replica of the Ba'ath Party of al-Assad in Syria, or it is a replica of the regime in Iran, authoritarian, dictatorship, or oppressive to our people. So we deserve something better. The Palestinian people deserve something better. And we need to change leadership. And it's becoming very urgent, Adam. It's the top priority. This is a debate inside the Palestinian politics. Some people will say, come on, forget about our internal issues. Don't show our dirty clothes to the neighbors. Let's keep this internally. Let's focus on our problems with the Israelis. But for God's sake, if we are not going to change leadership, nothing will happen. For good or bad. Maybe, yes, every time we will woke up in the morning and we will be definite that today is going to be worse than yesterday. This is the only fact that we will continue living in our lives. It's only by changing the leadership you can achieve something. I always give a metaphoric example, and I say, let us say that your neighbor that you always have issues with came and put your house on fire. And your kids are inside your house and they face the dangers to be burned. And then you go and pick up a pipe of water and you try to put down the fire. Then your own father comes and shuts down the source of water. At that moment, who is your enemy? The neighbor that put your house on fire, or your own father that is preventing you from putting down the fire and rescuing your kids? Our enemy now is our leadership, unfortunately. Yes, we have lots of issues with the Israelis. The major challenge is the Israelis. But the top priority is changing the leadership, because when we change leadership, we could have a leadership that can sort another way to handle the problem with Israel. A better way, a smarter way, a more practical way. So we are in these circumstances that our internal issues are becoming very urgent. We need to handle them.
So I'd actually like to go deeper on just that point. It sounds like one of your primary critiques of the PA is that they're not acting in a way that will lead to a Palestinian state. So what do you think would really the PA would need to do in order to achieve statehood?
Well, we need to do what Ben Gurion have done in 1947, 1948. They need to be practical. They need to take tough decisions. They need to establish the institutions of statehood. Well, Ben Gurion did not go to an instant cash machine and put one card and then he withdraw a state. Okay, when he declared the state of Israel, the independence, there was a state on the ground. There was airports. There were ports. There were institutions. There was an organization that was handling the health sector. There was economists that were immediately building the Israeli currency and the central bank and putting some rules for some economic strategy. There was an army. He took the Altenela option where he didn't allow an opponent or a follow Irgun, a fighters, Jewish, to land on the port of Tel Aviv with their arms. He knocked down that ship with Jewish fighters over it because he knew what is sovereignty. When there is statehood, there should be only one arm and it should be respected. So we need to follow these steps. It's not only exclusive for Israel. Any nation that started statehood took this decision. There was a leader who forced statehood into reality. So we Palestinians, we have lots of options. First of all, we need to figure out whether our strategy in handling the conflict with the Israelis is a correct strategy. I think it's a broken strategy. Because look what we are doing, Ada. We are trying to push the Israelis. We are trying to pressure the Israelis. The concept of resistance. But it doesn't work. Israelis don't respond positively to pressure. They became more stubborn. Each time we try to pressure them, either by using violence locally or by trying to mobilize the world against them. I'm not talking to them. Maybe the best way, in my point of view, is trying to persuade the Israelis, trying to convince them, communicate with them, talk to them, even when things are as ugly as what's happening now in Gaza. Our only chance to achieve an exit from this conflict is by convincing 51% of the Israelis to vote for ending the conflict. If we cannot convince 51% of the Israelis to vote for ending this conflict, nothing will change and nothing will help us at all. So we need to change strategy. We need to change the way we are thinking in this conflict. We need to change our narrative. We need to change our terminology, our language. We need to change the lenses that we are seeing this conflict through. This needs a change of leadership. This needs a comprehensive change of leadership. Abbas and all his cronies need to leave. None of them is good. I don't think that there is somebody who has a minimum sense of leadership and responsibility and continues to be part of the current regime.
So I guess I'm wondering. I really like that vision because it's taking a path of nonviolence and trying to appeal directly to Israelis. I guess I'm just wondering how that would look in practice because Israel won't let Palestine build their own military. They don't have an interest of giving Palestinians a state currently. It scares them. So, what do you think would need to be done to convince 51% of Israelis to agree to a Palestinian state? Like, how do you think that can be achieved through grassroots activism?
Well, I didn't say grassroots activism. Maybe when I said trying to persuade the
Oh,
Israelis,
that
convince
could be
them,
the PA
eh,
themselves.
maybe it is a top-down process. Okay,
Mm.
maybe I should start trying to make friendship with an Israeli prime minister, including the type of Bibi. Okay, I don't see any kind of attempts from President Abbas to open channels directly with Bibi. Maybe not now. Maybe in 2005, 2006, 2007, when that guy was in Bar Ilan University talking about two-state solution. So there could have been moment if there was a deep understanding on the Israeli society and Israeli politics, Abbas could have approached them in a different way that could affected them move from one place to another place. Now you touched a very important issue, Adam. You mentioned the word security. You mentioned fear. This conflict is only about two words. From one side, it is security from the Israeli side. And from the other side, from the Palestinian side, it's freedom and respect, freedom and human dignity. And by the way, human dignity is a Jewish value. Judaism taught humanity the human value of human dignity. This is something that Judaism brought to humanity. Uh, so I want to tell you that few months ago I read a poll organized by an organization called Bonim. It's a center-right think tank. And this poll was organized among Israeli Jews. And it says that 58% of Israeli Jews, no, sorry, 63% of Israeli Jews are against the two-state solution. Now, the same poll says that 48% of the 63% are against the two-state solution out of security reasons. Only 15% are against the two-state solution out of ideology background. So the main challenge here is fear. So we need to realize as Palestinians that my mission, my target, my strategy should not be built on the basis of trying to defeat the Israelis. It should be built on the basis of trying to defeat the fear inside the Israelis. If I defeat that fear, I win peace. I win the two-state solution. Can I change the hearts of the Israelis towards regaining their trust and releasing them from the pressure of lack of security? Yes. It depends on simple things. It depends on what we tell them. It depends on what we tell our kids. How do we talk to ourselves about this conflict? How do we talk to them about this conflict? How do we talk to the world about this conflict? And how do we act? If we talk internally and outside, if we behave in the way to show the Israelis that we don't intend to throw them to the sea, which is an illusion, because trust me, Adal, most of the Palestinians would like to live and coexist with the Israelis. I know very well the Israeli and Palestinian people. I know very well the Palestinian people because I am a Palestinian. I spent most of my day in mixing and mingling with Palestinians. And I know very well the Israelis because I meet an average of 300 Israeli a week. And I meet Israelis from wall to wall, from left, center, right. I know very well the Israeli society. So both people would like to live in peace, would like to coexist, might endorse the two-state solution if we release them from the hard feelings. This is the main challenge, Ada. People, there are lots of smart Israelis and smart Palestinians. A group of experts from here and there can give you 10 different scenarios on how to sort things when it comes to the final status issues, borders, Jerusalem, settlement, right of return, economics, water resources, security arrangements. There can be 10 different scenarios for each of these items that most of the Israelis and Palestinians would agree to. The problem here is the hard feelings. Our hearts are filled with hatred, and we need to clean them from this feeling. We need to release these, to get rid of these hard feelings. And we can do this. We can achieve this with the Israelis. I think, Ada, today, after the tragedy of the 7th of October, and I am a guy that went to envelope of Gaza and condemned the atrocities of Hamas in front of cameras from day one, when it was very unpopular to do something on this, like this. Even after the 7th of October, and I understand what is the 7th of October in the eyes of the Israelis, and even after this ugly, terrible war in Gaza, where we lost 20,000 kids in Gaza, and maybe much more, nobody knows the real number. We are now one elections away from peace. The coming Palestinian and Israeli elections could be the elections that will help us to go to peace option, to go to settlement option, to go to a final arrangement. Okay, sometimes the word of peace today sounds very naive. Okay, let's not use it. To go into certain arrangements that include security and political terms that will allow Palestinians and Israelis to live side by side in a decent, respectful, and equal basis. So we are one elections away from peace. We need to see what we can do as Palestinians to convince the Israelis to vote for peace in the coming elections. And we need to see how can we vote for an option of peace in our elections. Usually I speak more about what should we Palestinians do and not what should the Israelis do, because I think it's very important today that each side assumes responsibility and tries to explain what went wrong in our side and how can we correct it, and not to lecture the other side on what went wrong on the other side and how to correct it, because people don't like the opponent to lecture them. It's better if I want to deliver a message, I should set the example. And then it will impact the Israelis. When they see a change that is happening on the Palestinian side, this will have a powerful impact positively on the Israelis.
What you're saying very much resonates. People often ask me why I don't criticize Palestinians more. And I say, guys, I'm Israeli. Obviously, I'm going to criticize my own. I'm going to try to change my own. We should all focus on our own. the last thing anyone wants to hear is a lecture from their enemy. So I definitely I hear that. When I speak to many Palestinians, and these are the ones willing to speak to me, many won't speak to me because they don't want to normalize, right? They don't want to normalize ties with Israelis. They say end the occupation, and then we can speak, or give us justice, and then we could speak. But you're acknowledging here, saying the conflict won't end until we start speaking. It can't, like, one speaking needs to start before a solution is found. Have you found that you can successfully convince Palestinians that some level of normalizing, that doesn't mean kumbaya, pretend everything's okay, but some level of normalization, start speaking to fellow Israelis, start to share with them your humanity, start to show them you want peace? Are you able to convince Palestinians of this approach?
Well, Adar, we came from Hamburg 2 weeks ago, and in that room there were around 30 Israelis and Palestinians, and you have seen that, from both sides, people would like to talk. Before Hamburg, I was in Paris where 350 Israelis and Palestinians, they came to one room to talk. Okay, everybody now is realizing that the only way is to engage. The only way to, if I would like really the Israelis to put an end to the occupation. I need to convince them. I need to talk to them. I need to let them understand how ugly is this, but more important, looking towards the future and how beautiful it is when we end it, how healthy it is when we end it, how fruitful it is for all of us. Adar, now the opportunity that we are facing today, there is a dynamics in the region that serious Arab and Muslim powers, mainly led by the Saudi Arabia, which is the undisputed leaders of the Arab and Muslim world, is willing to endorse Israel, to embrace Israel, to integrate Israel, to normalize with Israel in a process that will create a new region, a Middle East that is focusing more on economic development, on a regional defense strategy. Most of the Israelis are happy that they could have hit severely the Iranian nuclear program. If you will ask me, I will tell you, you need to be more worried. You need to be very worried today. Because maybe Iran has learned a lesson from June 2025 that they don't need to possess an atomic bomb. Maybe they need to strengthen and develop their missiles program. 100 or 200 or 300 missiles launched to Israel could cause a lot of damage. And nobody can restrict Iran from developing its missiles program because, every country has the right to develop its offensive and defensive capabilities, but not everybody is okay with Iran developing nuclear power. So still the best way to eliminate technically any threat from Iran is engaging the region into some kind of a Middle East NATO arrangements, where the first defense line will be on the borders of Iran, not on the borders of Israel. Okay, 2,000 kilometers away. You start the defense system, several layers before something lands in in an Israeli city. So there is this dynamics that the region is becoming more understanding that the only way to survive the global challenges is to start, organizing the region collectively, because this is the trend. There is the EU, there is the USA, and there is the uh, global east of China and Russia together on economic relations that they started developing. And we in the Middle East, we are linking the West and the East, but we are still not very organized. If we come as an organized region, if Saudi Arabia and the Palestinians sign a peace treaty with Israel today, this will change Israel from being the villa in the jungle to the villa in the most prosperous upscale neighborhood with the financial capabilities, energy capabilities of the Gulf, and the high-tech development of the Israeli startup industry, and all the opportunities that Israel can offer. With the military capabilities of everybody, we have a very huge army in Egypt and a very smart army in Israel, and if well invested armies in Saudi and Emirates. All this together, when they come in one equation, don't underestimate the potential. The change of my kids and your kids and our grandkids, their life will be changed dramatically, positively, beyond the imagination of any human mind. And this is not fantasy, Ada. The fantasy is not believing in it, is not seeing it. If you are not seeing this potential, you are living in utopia and in fantasy. If you are not able to discover it, to envision it, to see it. So we need to seize this opportunity. We need to help each other seize this opportunity. If not, then we need to live in the current situation forever.
I mean, I guess to build on that, it sounds like there's another potential opportunity in the fact that Abbas is quite old now, and he's not going to be in power forever. Is it known who will replace him, and does that give you hope for the future?
Well, anybody can replace him as far as he is elected democratic. And I think the Palestinian people are very smart. When there will be a fair election and there will be parties that will put some agendas and strategies, people will vote to the right choice. And there are lots of Palestinian leaders who can really present our people with the vision that can match their dreams and their hopes and their needs. But currently, I can see that there is a potential leader that fits to lead this sensitive period of our life. Uh, sometimes changes, you cannot do it in a kamikaze jump. You need to go gradually, but with serious steps. Okay, I can see a person like Dr. Nasser al-Qudwa, for example, who is a member of the Central Committee of Fatah, who was forced to be exiled by Abbas. He deported him. He lives abroad now. He can be the leader now. He's in the 70s, still young compared to Abbas. He's a person that can take the responsibility now, maybe for 4 years, and allow a second election in 4 years where a new, younger generation can come.
With that, we're gonna open it up to audience questions. So whoever wants to hop on stage, raise your hand, or you could submit a question. I think I think we need hope, and you do give hope. So I appreciate that. I think one of the greatest challenges we face, and there are many, but one of the big ones is we don't believe in peace. We don't think it's possible. This was a poll from 2014. It was something like 73% of Israelis don't think we'll have peace in the next 100 years, and 92% of Palestinians think we won't have peace in the next 100 years. Well, when you don't believe in peace, why will you work towards peace? And
Mm.
when you don't believe in peace, you go into despair, and that radicalizes people and leads to violence. So I think hope is essential. So I appreciate you sharing this hopeful vision for a better future and for what's possible on the land. I think that's something our leadership is missing. I think on both sides, our leaders have kind of just accepted a status quo that is unsustainable, and that's not going to lead to a better future. It's kicking the can down the road, hoping things work themselves out one day. I wanted to ask you, as people are submitting questions or raising their hand, I wanted to ask you. You spent some years in prison. 5 years in prison, is that what it was?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, what was that all about?
Well, I try to see it as it is a hard experience, but I try to see it as a positive experience. I entered the jail at the age of 15. So I was a kid. First of all, I learned my Hebrew there. So
Hmm.
I can say I have master's degrees in Hebrew, 5 years of intensive course of Hebrew, because there I was speaking Hebrew with the guards, and I learned lots of things, including independence. Suddenly you are in a place where nobody is taking care of your needs. You need to take care of your cleaning your clothes, of uh, preparing your bed, uh, keeping yourself healthy. It's a lot of responsibility on a kid when he's doing this alone. And I learned patience. In prison, you need to be patient because, you're serving time in closed doors. So, and you start thinking in depth more. It's quiet. It gives you time to think. So, it's not easy to lose 5 years of your life behind doors, but I think it had contributed a lot to strengthen me in so many ways. It developed my personality in a positive way. Okay, I started there. First of all, it's an opportunity to know lots of Palestinians because you are with hundreds of Palestinians locked in the same place. But then I started discovering also the other side. Started talking to Israelis, also guards, they spend lots of hours inside closed rooms, the same the rooms, they also spend lots of long hours. So we talk. So this gave me the opportunity to start discovering the other side. The other side starting having names and faces and family stories. And, you like this guy, you don't like this guy. You start realizing that they have nice people. There are some people that you don't get good with them. So you avoid talking to them. Some people you wait for the opportunity that they come back again and you start talking to them. So you start seeing that the Israelis is just like us. They are people, normal people who have their stories, who have their dreams, who maybe not necessarily are dedicating their life just to fight us. And this is, by the way, what the Israelis could learn when they start talking to Palestinians. That the Palestinians also are people with normal dreams, with stories every day, with family relations, with things they like to do. There are some Palestinians you can get well with, and some other Palestinians you avoid to talk to. This is normality of any society. You start discovering the mutual humanity that we share. And this bond is stronger when we discover it, Adar. It is stronger than any other political considerations. I mean, me and you, we are human beings before being Palestinians or Israelis. We discovered this when we stayed 3 days together in Hamburg. So when we meet the other side more, we start, realizing a lot of things, discovering the other side. I always face repeated questions from Israelis. How many Palestinians believe in what you believe? I always answer by a question. How many Palestinians did you meet? Most of the Israelis tell me you are the first Palestinians. Congratulations. The first Palestinians you have met, you liked what he said. Start meeting more. Start knowing more. We are confused a lot, Adar, because we have been under campaigns of manipulation for a long time. It confused our minds and way of thinking. If you open any Palestinian media outlet, TV channel, radio channel, if you read any Palestinian newspaper, it's always negative things on the Israelis. If you look at any Israeli media, it's always negative things about Palestine. As if there is nothing good on the other side, which is not true. And there are a political elite that has been forcing its interest on us on both sides. We Israelis and Palestinians, we are hostages of our current leaders. Bibi has been the face of Israel for 19 years. Abbas was the face of Palestinians for 20 years. We have been hostages in the bunkers of Abbas for 20 years. The Israelis are hostages in the bunkers of Bibi for 19 years. And trust me, both leaders enjoy the current situation. They enjoy their partnership. They are the best partners to each other. This equation of Abbas, Hamas, and Bibi, it serves each one in a different way. Bibi wants Gaza to be separated from the West Bank and the Palestinians to be divided so that he avoids a negotiation table. Abbas does not care about Gaza. He hates Gaza. He doesn't want to be there. He prefers to maintain and keep, running his monopoly corruption that generates lots of millions for him every day and for his family in the West Bank. And Bibi wants to be in power because the center of the whole globe for him is the prime minister of office and prime minister chair. And Hamas is Hamas. We've heard statements from Hamas leaders that say, well, our responsibility is to protect our soldiers, not to protect the Palestinians in Gaza. We understand there is a lot of casualties in Gaza, but this is not my responsibility. This type of leadership that we are facing, leadership that is focused more on its own interests, on its own party interests, on its political existence and continuation of their remaining in power at the expense of what really the Palestinians want and what really the Israelis want.
Thank you. We now have a question from World Peace 2050, Adam Neira. Welcome to the stream, Adam. What do Adar and Summer think about a Holy Land Commonwealth management structure instead of the two-state solution? So I imagine what Adam's asking, a confederation rather than just a traditional two states. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I really don't care what will be the vote of Israelis and Palestinians. One state, two state, federation, confederation, one land, land for all, a state for all its citizens. As far as 51% of each side accepts, so it's let it go. But by definition, any option that does not base itself on political separation, not necessarily demographic, not necessarily geographical separation. Maybe into the two-state solution, we don't want to build a wall. Maybe it's open borders. But a two-state solution could be the only solution because, for a simple reason, Israelis would love to live in their own Jewish democratic state. So the only way to achieve this, we need to separate them from the millions of Palestinians. If the current situations continue to be a de facto, by demographical facts, if we are in a one-state reality, by demographical facts, it is a state of Palestine. Today, 51% of the people between the river and the sea are non-Jews. So the only way to allow the Jewish people to live in their democratic Jewish state, to control their own lives, to control their own security, to flourish, to develop, to survive, to keep their culture and religion and traditions, is by separating 5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza into a two-state solution model. Any other solution is not a solution. But again, the details are very important. So it's not important how to title it. You can put any title. The details. Will the Israelis be able to maintain living in a Jewish democratic state? Will the Palestinians enjoy equal rights, have their own state? Adar, I am a 53 years old guy. I was born here in Jerusalem in 1972 under Israeli sovereignty. 5 years after Israel annexed East Jerusalem, united it, and declared it the eternal united capital of Israel, and decided that 400,000 Palestinians, who are 40% of the total population of Jerusalem, remain as permanent residents but not citizens. I am not a citizen of any state. I don't have a passport. I don't have an Israeli passport. I don't have a Palestinian passport. I don't have any other passport. And is this normal? Can anybody today in the 21st century be stateless? At least I need to be a citizen of one state. So if Israel rejects me and I don't have a Palestinian state, how can we continue together? How can, any kind of solution that does not keep the current status? We are now today in a two-floor state where part of the people are in the noble floor and part of the people are in the servant floor. This cannot continue. It cannot continue. It's not sustainable. So we need to change the current status quo, to change it in a way that can fulfill the needs and aspirations of both people. and to respect the individual rights of both people, of everybody that is living in this piece of land. Because what we have learned from the 7th of October and the war in Gaza, that whatever we do to each other, however ugly we become, however, how far we think that everything is permissible for us to do to the other side, nothing will change. We will continue both living here. Still, after all what has happened in the last 21 months, there are still 7 million Israelis, 7 million Palestinians who are living here together in the same piece of land. Nothing has changed. Nobody disappeared and nobody will disappear. So we need to find a way that we can enjoy our relation to this land, our mutual link to this land. The Jewish people have historical rights in this land for thousands of years. It's a pity and a mistake that we Palestinians don't recognize the historical rights of Jews in this land. It is a historical fact. But also the Jews need to understand that they have never been alone in this land. There was always others. And these others are the Palestinians. The question here is not who belonged more or who belonged before. We both belong. We have a common history together in this land. All of it was coexistence except for the last 100 years. If we have these thousands of years of common history of coexistence, we should be able to end these ugly 100 years and continue to have common future together. Why not? It has been dominant all over history. These days are the exceptions.
This is a technical question that kind of sparked my curiosity. You don't have a passport, but I saw you in Hamburg. So how do you fly places?
Israel gives us a travel document where in the item of nationality it says Jordanian. Jordan gives us a travel document. Under the nationality, they say Palestinians. And the authority cannot give us a Palestinian passport because we are a final status item. They can give only to Palestinians born in the West Bank and Gaza.
Interesting.
So, you know, Adar, sometimes when I fill a visa application and there is this question of nationality. Technically, legally, okay, I'm Palestinian. I have no doubts of my identity. But technically, you need to understand how this country is expecting you to answer. Because technically, you don't have a passport, you don't have a nationality. You are putting either your Israeli travel document or your Jordanian travel document. If you submit both, you will confuse the consul because what are you, for God's sake? With Israeli travel document says you are Jordanian and the Jordanian travel document says you are Palestinian and you don't present a Palestinian. What are you? The basic identity, the basic question of identity, you cannot answer it technically and legally because I am confused. How legally should I answer this question in a visa application? This is a strong dilemma, Adar. This is not healthy. I didn't know why Moshe Dayan decided to annex the whole East Jerusalem, but not the Palestinians living in East Jerusalem. As if these East Jerusalemite Palestinians, when Israel occupied East Jerusalem, annexed it, were aliens and fell from the sky out of a sudden. The law of entry to Israel applies on me. When I renew my citizenship, it is valid for 10 years. Each 10 years, I need to go to the Ministry of Interior. I need to prove that Jerusalem is the center of my life, and I need to prove it by arnona, by electricity, water bills, by the taxation, by the Bituah Leumi, by so many documents that we keep we store them and we take this file every 10 years and go and say, please, do I qualify to continue to be permanent resident or not? Is this healthy? Where do you find this in other capital in the world? Where, give me one example where a capital of a world has 40% of its inhabitants under a status of permanent resident but not citizens. And why? Why, if Israel says that we will never give back East Jerusalem, this is ours, eternal capital, unified. You don't want two more Arab members of the Knesset? That's your fears? If you give citizenship to 40% of the inhabitants of your capital, I mean, the normal growth that is happening there is normal growth. It's part of what's happening here in the city. You want to block citizenship because you are afraid you will lose two Knesset seats to the Arabs if they start voting. Is this the worries? What's the difference between me and the Palestinian in Haifa? But this is part of the dilemma, that sometimes political leaders don't want to decide on things, avoid decisions, and leave things to be more complicated.
Do you have time for one more question, Summer? I know you have a guests coming over and stuff. So
yes, I can have one more question.
Okay, one final question, because this is an interesting one. This is from Shachar Ziv, a longtime viewer. Does Summer think if East Jerusalem Palestinians hypothetically apply for citizenship and vote en masse for Knesset and municipality, could this be a path for liberation, rights, and peace? Because there's meant to be a path to citizenship. I just don't know.
I will tell you. First of all, technically, we are allowed to vote to the municipality. We don't vote, and this is a big mistake. If we vote now to the municipality, we will control 50% of the municipal council. And trust me, if this happens, I think the Israelis will maybe react by forcing the separation. Because can you imagine a Palestinian mayor for Jerusalem? I mean, what's the impact of this on you as Israeli Ada? Technically, we can do it. Because there is the 60% of the inhabitants of Jerusalem, they are not one party. There are the Haradim, and inside the Haradim there is Shas, Agudat Torah, there is, the secular leftists, there are the secular right wing, and you can see that it's not a homogeneous, body in Jerusalem. So if the Palestinians go with one vote, one list, and the others go in 5 different or 6 different lists, then the Palestinian list will be able to form the coalition in the municipality and maybe succeed to put a Palestinian mayor in Jerusalem. Does this have an impact on the Israeli? Definitely. The Israelis will not like it, that the mayor of their capital is a Palestinian. Unfortunately, this is a tool that is offered to us. We are not using it wrongly. We should change this. Not because we want maybe to upset the Israelis and the result, but because this is a legal tool to allow us to improve our lives, to develop our neighborhoods, to allow more budget to come. Can you imagine, Adar, that today there is not a single public swimming pool in East Jerusalem? There are 38 public swimming pools in West Jerusalem. Not a single one. Not a single one. Can you imagine that there is not a single mall in East Jerusalem? Not a single public hospital in East Jerusalem? With us voting in the municipality, we will be able to change the quality of our life. Not necessarily at the expense of any other neighborhoods or population. Maybe us running the municipality will allow a little bit of homogeneity, some kinds of integration of East and West Jerusalem. The gap now between East and West Jerusalem. You don't need to be a genius to realize this. Just make a tour, a quick tour, a quick drive. You will be able to realize when you are driving inside an Arab neighborhood and when you are driving inside the Jewish neighborhood. The gap is big because we don't influence the decision-making process in the municipality, and this is wrong. Thank you so much, Adar, for
Samer, shukran.
organizing this.
This was great. For those who want to get in touch with Summer, you could find his link to his Twitter down below in the description. And I'm looking forward to when we meet again. I know it'll happen soon.
Inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Summer. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that wraps it up. We'll continue. We'll do a little community stream because we do have a nice group here on Discord. So let's pull that up. Probably just 15, 20 minutes. I know I sometimes say that and then it's longer, but I'm serious this time. Well, we'll see. Okay. So if anybody wants to hop on stage, you're welcome to share thoughts, ask questions, etc. One thing that I really appreciate about Summer's approach is he understands the impact of being able to reduce fear in Jewish Israelis. It's not something that's so easy to do, but if there is a way to make Israelis feel like they don't face a constant existential threat, then we'll vote for less radical leaders. We'll vote for leaders that are more willing to engage in the peace process. So I think there's something very important with that message. But I think it's worth saying also that he currently, and this is just currently, but he is an outlier, I would say, in Palestinian society. So how I wish him success, and I will support him on that endeavor. But I wonder how he could make this concept mainstream. It's not easy, right? It's when I talk to Palestinians about this concept, they often say, "Don't ask me. It's not my job to make my oppressor feel safe. That's not my job." Right, so that's the very common response, and I get it. So he's definitely an outlier. It's certainly, there's something evolved about him to be able to see things that way. But how do you make that more mainstream? I'm not quite sure, but I support the effort without a doubt. Okay, Omar, we're going to bring you on. Justin, we're going to bring you on. Cool. What's up, guys?
So I just want to say what you just said right now is a little bit. I think you don't have it right. I think that people like Samir, and it's pronounced Samir.
Whoops.
People like Samir's views, I think, are very mainstream. I think that he's absolutely correct when he says that most Palestinians share his view that they know that they're going to coexist with Israel, with Israelis. They don't have a problem with that. In fact, most Palestinians, especially in Jerusalem, live and they work, with Israelis and Israeli hospitals. For example, if you know that the security guards who protects Israeli shopping malls are Palestinians. I think it's over 50, 60% of the workforce that works as security guards are Palestinian. The hospitals, half of the staff, the pharmacies, everything. So I think his approach is something that's very mainstream in Palestinian society. He said a name that I think is very important. It's Nasser al-Kidwa. Nasser al-Kidwa was the Palestinian ambassador to the PLO ambassador to the UN for a long time. Nasser al-Kidwa was also the nephew of Yasser Arafat. And Nasser al-Kidwa, who, by the way, I spoke to about 3 weeks ago, is living in exile right now. And okay, sure. Yeah. He's living in exile right now in France. And one of his comments was, I'm living hiding out from Mahmoud Abbas and stuff. So I think that his criticism of the PA is based. I think his what he's saying about Palestinian society is based. I think what disturbs many Palestinians with him is not his views, not his call for coexistence, not his calls for making peace with Israel. I think the problem with him is how he places more emphasis and blame on Palestinians than Israel. And I think that I put two questions in the comments here. Unfortunately, you didn't get a chance to ask him. It's that if he wants to blame the Palestinian Authority for being corrupt, which, he's not going to get an argument from me, poor leadership, poor decision making, most Palestinians will agree with him. But the approach that we are going to put more blame and association, and he does it in a way, and I've heard him speak in Arabic before. He does it in a way where, like, we have to grovel and we have to convince Israelis that we want peace. There's definitely something to be said for that. But when it comes to the point where, how do you speak to people who after 30 something years, and I don't get this perspective that he's an outlier. He's not. What he's saying has been being said since the 90s, since the 80s. So when you come to me and say that he's an outliner, I don't understand what that means. He's an outliner because he's advocating the same views that the Palestinians have been saying, and even that the Palestinian Authority represented. But then he's criticizing the Palestinian Authority, the same authority that's been under assault by Israel, that they've gotten their funding cut, that they've been put in a situation where they have to protect Israeli lives rather than defend the Palestinian citizens who are being attacked by civilians. These are factors that you have to take into consideration. So you can't have a move to democracy, a move to institution building when you have these elements. And I think that this is the problem we have. We don't have a problem with what he's saying. We don't have a problem with the stand. We have a problem with this approach that let's go talk to these enemies, the same enemies that really don't want to recognize our equality, recognize the crimes that are being perpetrated against us, but that will say accept it. And then some of the comments in here that just so absurd today that I've heard, like that the problem with Palestinians is you don't want justice. You guys are too emphasized on justice and not peace. And I don't understand this notion that this Zionists throw at me, that we Palestinians are so infatuated and desiring for justice that we can't get peace. What justice exists without peace? What peace exists without justice? I need to learn this. So maybe they are the ones who need to convince me, not me be the ones to convince them.
Cool, thank you. It's interesting because if I look at how the PA has acted, I would agree with you that the PA has made an effort to try to make Israel feel safe and Israelis feel safe. I don't know how much outreach they do to actual Israelis, but he does seem to be an outlier in Palestinian society. I very rarely hear Palestinians accepting this idea that let's make them feel safe. It's generally, that's not our responsibility. Why should we do that? And then when it comes to justice, I do understand that remark. It's often there's some segment of the population that will not accept any solution until the whole land is liberated. That's like a hardline stance that views justice as liberating the whole land. And if they need to fight for another 100 years, they will. I don't think that's, that's not an uncommon position.
I don't think that's the majority of Palestinians. I think that you really don't understand Palestinian society. And I think that this has been proven. And I think that steps that the Palestinians have made have been a lot more consolidating for coexistence than Israeli society. That's just a fact. I don't know where you.
Yeah,
get this
no.
notion
I don't disagree with that. Well, my reference point, right? There's the Palestinian peace activists that I'm in touch with, and they're super compromising and are willing to make concessions and are willing to engage with Israelis. But I also recognize that there's a selection bias. I'm only speaking to a subset of the population. So then my understanding of the rest of Palestinian society is from things like polling and the Ask Project and remarks I see online. So that this isn't right, but that's really all the data I have to collect from, right? Because I can't walk in Ramallah and just interview. Well, I guess I can, but when Corey does,
Corey doesn't.
But Corey does that, and then the results he get do not. They show that the average person, at least who he's interviewing, has a much more hardline approach. So those are my reference points, right? I can't live amongst Palestinian society and collect all this data. So it's the Palestinians I know, but I recognize that those are the ones willing to talk to me.
So let me ask you something. If you walk into Tel Aviv and poll people and ask them, do you think that their personalities will be different than, say, for example, an area under occupation, like say, for example, I don't want to say, I know people don't like my Holocaust comment stuff. So let's say, for example, walking in, say, for example, Amsterdam in 1945, do you think you're going to get the same kind of psychological results, psychological answers?
No, obviously
people
not.
Under siege and people under oppression are going to give you different answers. You can't expect to walk into downtown Ramallah and talk to people on the streets, some of whom haven't been 10 kilometers away from their home, and expect the same bubbly answers that you get when you go to an Israeli society that's in Tel Aviv that goes to the beach every day.
That's
You're
fine.
not going to
That's fine, but that's my point, right? That the average Palestinian living under occupation feels a certain way that is not as moderate as what Summer is saying, or a lot of the Palestinian peace activists are saying. So we could point to the reason why they're not as bubbly, which I would completely agree with. But the reality is, he does seem to be quite unique in his approach currently.
I don't know what's so unique about it. I think that there are thousands of Palestinians who have the same approach. The only difference is that he is willing to go into, like, for example, the meeting that he just had with some of the same people who support the genocide, who support the settler movement, and are basically supporting, like, people literally killing his own people. And I think that this is the problem people have. We don't have a problem with what he says. In fact, we agree with him. We don't have a problem with his position. We don't have a problem with his call for whether it be a two-state solution or a justice. And the fact that he even outlined his own situation, him as a Jerusalemite. First of all, he talks about that he can't vote. The reason why he can't vote is not because of the Palestinian Authority, it's because he lives in Jerusalem. Jerusalem residents were specifically told to be separated from the Palestinian Authority. They have when there was elections, they had a little bit of limited role in things like that. They even had a representative, but anything that indicates Palestinian Authority in East Jerusalem, for example, the Orient House. I don't know if you're familiar with the Orient House. The Orient House was seized by Israel. Because why? Because they found it that had activities that was related to the PA. So the institution that was the political center for Palestinian civil society in East Jerusalem has been seized now for about almost 20 years. And the fact that he's a Jerusalem resident, and I don't know if you heard this, and there was a comment here that I will never forgive about, I have to live. There's a reason why I live in California. The reason why I live in California is because my residency rights and my family's residency rights were stripped from me. So when you say such things, I want that person to know that this privileged person is able to go live in my land, my parents' land, where my family has lived for over 1,000 years, to say that, to just say that that is almost as inconsiderate as anything you've ever accused me of regarding Holocaust comparison. But that's okay. I will remember that. And the thing is that he is an indication and proof that he has to go, even a person who he said he was 53 years old, for 53 years, he's never lived in any other city in the world but Jerusalem, and still has to go and prove to his municipality that he is living in the city. Here's my tax bill, here's my electric bill, to show his residency. And meanwhile, this Zionist person can go from LA or wherever the hell they come from and go live and be there. They don't have to do any proof of anything.
Yeah, that's
this is the people. This is the people that we're dealing with, and this is the people that we're dealing with.
I mean, the person you're specifically talking about, from my experience with them, has shown nothing but compassion. I think it's
if that's compassion, then stab
no, but it's, sometimes things get heated, and we sometimes have such different vantage points that making a seemingly normal comment can be deeply triggering to the other side, and it's often not intentional. So I don't think the intention was to say something hurtful. But we don't need this conversation doesn't need to be about just that one remark.
Always we'll step down. But when I do comparisons and they get upset, I just want you to remember that, okay? Because I will never forgive that. Never forgive it.
I hear you. Omar, what's on your mind? And Justin, you're welcome to stick around. So we'll keep this flowing. But Omar, what's up? Thanks, Justin. I'm not hearing you, Omar.
Can you hear me now?
Let's try again.
Hello?
Let's try again. Yeah, I hear you. Yep.
Let me just. This, you said that the burden of security, that you believe that the Palestinians say that that this doesn't lie on like this isn't part of the Palestinian responsibility. I disagree. It definitely does. If you're walking through a path for a two-state solution, and one of the major problems is the security of Israelis and the Jewish residents and the land, then definitely you bear a responsibility to ensure this kind of security. And the security measures that you have to implement and the quality of security isn't what you're asking for, or isn't you aren't setting the standards yourself, but actually the Israelis and the Israeli citizens and the Jewish people who are setting these standards, and you need to abide by them. My problem isn't recognizing that, because I believe anyone who doesn't recognize that is a little bit sidelining a huge part of the conflict, or a huge part of not the conflict, but a huge part of an obstacle existing in the peace process. The problem is that when your primary rhetoric and your core idea of the conflict it is solely based on that, because again, we've seen this happen in the Gaza war currently in the past 2 years. How many guarantees were given to the Israeli government from different types, from different governments, from different institutions, from the UN, from Arab governments, from the Arab Council, from Hamas, from the PA, from the Palestinians themselves, from multiple Palestinians themselves, from people who are radical and people who are moderate and people who are more Israeli leaning. So it isn't an issue of security. Definitely it becomes an issue later once the Israelis come and with a white flag of peace, stop having a genocide, understand also what are the core obstacles for the Palestinians to achieve that peace. And then once we reach that point, we can definitely bring up the security question. We can definitely bring up the security measures. We can definitely say, so how can we ensure the security of Israeli Jewish civilians? If this is, when we're speaking about security, I also mean religious freedoms, freedoms of movement, freedoms of other Israelis coming to the land. But it's many questions. But for me to jump the bridge and just talk about something that is inconsequential to what's currently happening and focus on it. I'm sorry. What Samar was doing and other people were applauding him for, and to forget about why exactly this conflict exists from the Palestinian eyes and from the Israeli eyes is doing a disservice to the Palestinians.
So, I agree to an extent that it might not be a realistic expectation to have a massive amount of Palestinians engaging in a process that make Israelis feel safer, and that was kind of my main critique of Summer's approach. But I'm not going to try to. I support his approach because it can help us get to a peaceful solution sooner rather than later, and in a very clear way.
I disagree.
Well, let me just explain why. One of the reasons why you have the right is getting stronger in Israel, and how Netanyahu has successfully won elections for decades now. He always runs under on a platform of security. I will keep you safe. I'm the strong one to keep you safe. If more Israelis don't feel such a grave threat, they're more likely to vote for center parties and left-wing parties that are likely going to be more involved more actively involved in the peace process. So you could certainly point to ways how this will actually progress peace. How do you convince Palestinian society to engage in this? I don't know what that looks like. And in general, I don't have high expectations from the masses on either side. People in conflict generally are pretty extreme and are not, like, as much as I'd like to see this beautiful grassroots peace movement, I'm not banking on that. I think we need to, focus on that to some extent, but also be exhausting all other options, which comes from external pressures as well. Yeah. Anyways.
When was the previous conflict before October 7th between the Israeli and the Palestinian side?
2021 there was a month, but that was with Islamic Jihad. Yeah, yeah, 2021, maybe something
Yeah,
small in
so
2022.
2021 was you're speaking regarding the Sheikh Jarrah and Jerusalem, right?
Mm-hmm. Something about
Yeah.
Al-Aqsa, something with Al-Aqsa.
What happened before that? Because the back, I think, was it in 2017, the back in 2017, I think from 2015 up until 2021, which you mentioned. So we have a period of 6 years. We haven't seen much conflicts on the Israeli and Palestinian side, except obviously for the attacks happening here and there, either from the settlers or militia groups. But things don't really don't really rise to the global scene, or don't really shift the Israeli narrative, the Palestinian narrative so much when it comes to the resident population and the views. And what have we seen during these 6 years? At least I'm speaking about years that I've lived in, that I understand. Maybe even Justin can provide a more accurate depiction of history. What we've seen is the U.S. recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, the U.S. solidifying Israel's hold over the West Bank, implementing new settlement plans, furthering of development of ethnic cleansing and forced displacement in the West Bank, further recognition of Israel's Israel's sorry, I'm blanking at the moment, but Israel's basically Israel's sovereignty over the land, and the Abrahamic Accords, Arab countries falling more and more in line into achieving more peace with Israel, just to benefit themselves and their economic relations and their economic and their own economies, without even thinking about the Palestinian land. And when did we see it shift? When did we see people calling out Israel on their BS and asking them to achieve peace, even within the Israeli societies? Unfortunately, and no one can deny this, after October 7th. So this is where the argument that you made, unfortunately, falls off. And for me, I'm not saying armed resistance is the only way and this kind of thing. I'm just saying that for you to say that that having some sort of peace, or having some sort of the former status quo, is what is going to inherently change the Israeli society from inside, and they will start to implement new changes, electing new governments that are more looking towards peace. This is an incorrect thing to say, because we've tried this, we've seen this happening over a period of 6 to 5 years, and I believe someone who's more wary of history and who's lived throughout the 80s and the 90s would have been able to bring even more examples and better examples than the one I just quoted.
Well, Omar, I have a fair bit of counter examples that I think are very relevant. As early as early Zionism, in the early days, there were different brands of Zionism with different visions for the land, and in response to violence, the hardliners and more militant Zionists gained more power. Their version of Zionism was legitimized, and I think this is pretty consistent throughout history, that extremists are empowered by fear and violence. We saw this very clearly after Oslo failed. The left and center weakened and the right strengthened. We saw this again after disengagement from Gaza failed. The right was strengthened. And after October 7th, we saw a more radicalized population than ever before. So I could say, I think there is potentially a path to Palestinian justice that involves violence. I just think that, we should always view violence as the absolute last resort, and B, history shows us that violence ultimately strengthens the radicals and is then used as a justification to impose more oppressive conditions on Palestinians. That's been pretty consistent throughout history. What I will say is, and I think you were like alluding to this, but Israel made a mistake by not rewarding the moderation of the PA. They didn't reward them. They enacted a consequence on them by continued expansion.
They did the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. By continued expansion, and the way it's viewed is that Hamas got rewarded for violence by the disengagement. So Israel played this horribly. I agree completely. But if we look at the population is continuously radicalized through failed peace agreements and through violence. And the way to de-radicalize them is to give them a sense of safety.
No, I don't want to be this guy who says the reason armed resistance isn't working is because of they aren't powerful enough. But I actually agree with the entirety of what you said. And one of the things one of the things that you mentioned that resonated is neither paths have shown any kind of possibility for this conflict to be solved anytime soon. Either the diplomatic negotiations, appeasing move to Israel, and appeasing move to the Israeli government and society through being subservient to them, or through armed resistance and through militant attacks and what people would allude to as terrorist attacks. I was asked by Rachel in the comments about what exactly do I view as a solution, or what exactly would finally achieve this middle point where we can actually start peace talks and we can actually bring both sides to the peace roundtable. And for me, I see it in Palestinians and the Palestinian authorities achieving power that isn't through groups like Hamas and isn't through militant attacks. And this power, I view it coming from two sources, two sources, either through the other Arab nations and other nations who enable moderate voices, or at the same time moderate voices that understand the Palestinian rights and are never back down from what the Palestinians should have, or by Israel conceding and giving this power and actually coming from a place of peace and a place of understanding and giving this giving some sort of power to the Palestinian Authority or whichever authority they prefer. Obviously, it won't be Hamas, in order for an initiation of the peace talks start happening. Because think about it. Let's say Hamas tomorrow comes and say, I'm waving the white flag, I'm returning all the hostages, let's talk peace. First of all, the peace that will happen then would be swayed in Israel's favor. Israel will control all the cause. Hamas wouldn't be able to get any of the things that the Palestinians want, for example, the right of return, an actual Palestinian state, a Palestinian passport, some sort of security for the Palestinians, which I don't know why nobody even speaks about. Like the Palestinians need more security measures and security guarantees more than the Israelis. And now in this current day, they're the ones who actually need the security more than Israelis. But the Israelis keep saying it because for them, they don't want to lose something they already have. But for the Palestinians, unfortunately, they've already grown accustomed to not having any security. They just don't want to be killed, They just want to have the food, some sort of food in the fridge, and they want to be able to walk on the streets without being killed. They don't care about the having education or having being able to travel or being able to visit their families, because they've already been so much in a life where this doesn't exist. They've forgotten about it, and this is what Israel is currently doing. And once and so going back to the Hamas hypothetical comparison, once Hamas comes on the table, it will fail again, because Israel will be in power. They will see that we've been able to dismantle Hamas. Hamas has agreed to what we wanted. We're never giving them anything they've ever asked for. And the same Palestinians who will be insulting Hamas, saying finally Hamas has stopped killing us, the Palestinian population who were rising against Hamas, will actually start being pro-Hamas again. Because once they see Hamas has currently achieved the peace that the Israelis have long wanted, why isn't Israel giving us what we wanted? Hamas is dismantled. Hamas is leaving the Gaza Strip. Hamas will be going to prison or whatever. Why isn't Israel, aren't the Israelis giving us what we want? And then again, they will be radicalized once more and understand that nothing can be achieved through peace and diplomatic talks, and another Hamas will be in place by another name, by another mantle, but basically the same vision and the same goal, and this conflict will continue for hundreds of years. So unless there is international support, which we don't see much of at the moment. And unless Israel concedes and gives the Palestinians some sort of agency and autonomy for them to actually be able to converse their population and to converse themselves and to actually have some sort of power when it comes to achieving to speaking in these peace talks, we won't be seeing a resolution of the conflict. Or unless, unfortunately, the other side is Hamas getting some sort of Superman power, or some sort of another militant group gets some sort of power, and they just destroy Israel, which is another radical argument.
I think I actually agree. I think the grassroots efforts could certainly play a role in solving the conflict, but our populations now are so radicalized. I just don't know how feasible that is. Like, I'm just not sure what the path to having a grassroots movement that is actually relevant. And then I look at the trajectory of other movements. I think the best bet at this point is just having the United States put necessary pressure on Israel to make certain concessions and return to the negotiating table and work towards peace, because that's something that there's already very clear momentum. The next generation of Americans, and this should also be scary for Israelis for obvious reasons, but the next generation of Americans, as well as Europeans, as well as Chinese, the young generation of Chinese also are more anti-Israel than ever before. This, as scary as it is for Israelis, can actually be the most feasible and realistic path towards peace. The United States not acting as an enabler for Israel's recklessness, but actually pushing Israel to do what's needed to solve the conflict. And also pressure would need to be put on whatever, whoever is ruling the Palestinians at that time. But I think that if we look at all the different ways we can achieve peace, that seems to be the clearest path. That's how I justify doing this commentary to an international audience and often engaging in rhetoric that is seemingly demonizing my own government. That's intentional. I want Americans to not be blindly supportive of Israel, but that's also why I will promote a humanist approach and not call for any harm to anybody living between the river and the sea, but very clearly criticize the institutions. Don't be blindly supportive of Israel. Israel is doing a lot wrong. Do not let your politicians blindly support Israel. I actually think that's probably the clearest path to peace currently, unless there's some like once in a generation leader that's elected that can really do something. But when I look at our leadership now on both sides, I don't see that once in a generation leader just waiting to change the game. I do want to see Netanyahu gone, but it's not like there's a long line of people waiting that will drastically change the status quo, or at the very least, they're not speaking a language that gives me hope that they will.
I agree with you. Actually, one of the things I usually argue with Justin about, Justin's still here, is when you speak about the October 7th attack, and I see that one of its merits is the international scene actually gets to see what's been happening for the Palestinians and the Israelis alike. And they get to understand history. Even myself, I've started reading about this conflict back in 2021 in Sheikh Jarrah. I've never read about its history per se before 2021, and this is why there are many things that I'm actually uneducated about, and I'm continuously learning more and more. But I feel like after the current status quo and after what's currently happening, the next generation hopefully creates leaders who understand that it's not just Palestinians versus Israelis, but making sure that both have their own rights, and the sense that they believe what their own rights are, not what other side what the other side decides, or another outside side or foreign side decides. I think Justin wants to speak.
Inshallah. Yeah, let's bring him on. Either that or we'll find some AI solution, And real quick, I want to issue a correction. Thanks, Deranged Centrist. I made a mistake. 2022 was between Israel and Islamic Jihad. 2021 was between Israel and Hamas.
Actually, in 2022, when Islamic Jihad did launch, they were actually arrested by Hamas. Hamas actually went against them and actually took.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so they actually did their part in their, and it was because, Sisi came through with the 500 million from the Gulf Arab countries and stuff. So Hamas can be very pragmatic, especially when it comes to money. So I want to ask Omar, because he said something about the positive effects of October 7th in the sense of generating support for Palestinians across the world. It was at the point, Omar, that you made, that it made you look into this situation more. It made you study more. It made you maybe more have stronger convictions for Palestinian rights. Was that what you were trying to say? Did he say yes?
Yeah. He said
yes.
Okay,
Hello?
so this is something that's debating among Palestinian society, that the gains and losses from October 7th, and the Palestinian society is having this debate internally. But I have to say that when it comes to the Palestinians on the ground, like especially those in Gaza, who I'm in touch with daily, and then people like in Jerusalem and West Bank, people like in my areas, I think that overall they see that October 7th did have some of these gains. Like, we have demonstrations in the West, we have, more people hating Israel and stuff. But I don't think that the positives that came out of this outweighs the negatives. I think that the loss of life, the destruction, the possible loss of Gaza, that we might actually have lost, but we actually might have a displacement. We still at this point don't know what's going to happen to the future of Gaza. We know that the people are being now gathered up in a concentration camp, possibly for to be shipped to other countries. So I don't know if the gains. I think that pretty much Palestinian society has said that no, it definitely wasn't worth it. It was a bad move. It was strategically wrong. And this was my position from the first. Adar me before October 7th, and we actually had this discussion on October 7th. I said that it wasn't the horrors of October 7th that I would admit did happen. That upset me the most. What upset me was that I know my enemy Israel is going to use this to accelerate a ethnic cleansing and turn an ethnic cleansing into a genocide. And this is what we talked about. And I don't know if you remember, Dar, but we even used the number 50,000. Because if you remember,
I remember. Yeah,
we even said the word 50,000. We said about 50,000. Because do you remember Abby Martin gave one time in Jerusalem? And she asked and this was way before October 7th, she said, what if this? And he said, we need to just carpet bomb and kill 50,000 people. So he used the term 50,000 almost as if he predicted, because we knew that this would basically give the green light to this horror, because we know our enemy. Now, from, then we hear pro-Iranian, Iranian proxies say that, Saudi Arabia was on the thing. If October 7th didn't happen, they would have normalized. I don't believe any of that. I think that this was just propaganda.
The thing is, I've actually gotten convinced of this by Abdullah and you, and on a bit more about it. You guys were absolutely right, but I still do believe they were at least down this path, and we've seen it happen, not just with the UAE and then Bahrain following suit. Even Bahrain themselves weren't that.
UAE and Bahrain are two different countries. The thing
I know.
Is with Saudi Arabia, but if you look at every statement, indication of normalization, it came from three sources. One of them was Benjamin Netanyahu, when he won the election in 2021, said, I'm going to do it here. The other one was Donald Trump, who's a compulsive liar, just as much as Netanyahu. And the other one was Iran and their proxies. This is the only sources. Now, if you go to Saudi diplomats,
do you think? I'm not speaking about 2023 or 2022. I'm speaking about 2030, 2035. Do you think that 5 years later, 10 years later, Saudi wouldn't have normalized with Israel if not for the October attack?
Because Saudi Arabia realized that Israel is not essential for their plans, and the Saudis are very pragmatic people. The Saudis, they may have looked into this because Iran. But I think I think the Saudis are wiser when it comes to the UAE, because they saw that Israel was more a liability than it was an asset. The UAE sees Israel as an asset. They're a smaller population. They have plans for Africa. They have plans for their global capitalistic empire, whatever the hell they're doing. They have plans for their investments and need the Israeli input in that. The Saudis have, I think, came to the realization that they don't necessarily need that. So it's a very, I'm not trying to say that they're.
But what would happen, Justin, what would happen if there arises a new thing that they want in the future and they realize that the only key for that 5 years later, that the only key to achieve that, for example, a nuclear plant, a nuclear weapon, something happens between them and Iran, and they want more American military support, or they want to buy certain munitions, and they see, and the key to that is normalizing with Israel. Because currently, yes, I agree with you. Saudi has been able to see that we don't need to normalize it.
There's an expression that the Westerners use. They say, if the mountain doesn't come, what is it? If the mountain doesn't come to Muhammad, bring Muhammad to them. No, if Muhammad doesn't come to the mountain, bring the mountain to Muhammad. But anyway, so it's something like that.
That doesn't sound like a Western expression.
It's a Western. I only heard it in the West. I never heard it in the Arab world until I came to someone said, I'm like, what?
Guys,
but the point is that, yeah.
Well, no. Finish your point. I just want to shut down the stream, but finish your point and then we'll continue.
I was going to say that I think the Saudis realize that if mountain, how do I say, if they don't come to us, the mountain, then the mountain will come to them. And I think that Saudi Arabia is playing that game. The UAE has not been able to do that. They don't have the population. They definitely got the money, but they're choosing. So I think that the Saudis have been a lot more careful. And remember, one thing that Saudi Arabia also needs is credibility in the Islamic world. And I think that UAE doesn't need that. Most people don't even know where the UAE is, to be honest with you. I mean, Dubai, yeah, now it's becoming more popular. But 20 years ago, if you asked the average person to point to the UAE, nobody knows where the fuck it is. I lived in that country for 3 years. And people, I mean, I remember going and told people, I live in the UAE. And people were like, where is that? So they didn't even know where it was.
This is American geography education.
No, I love America more than anything. People, it was an insignificant country.
So to those watching this live, if you want to continue the conversation, you'll just need to join Discord. You find a link for that in the description or in my bio if you're watching this on Twitter. I just dropped the link in chat as well, so you can see it there. And I imagine this conversation will continue for anywhere between another hour to 4, 5, 6. So we got time. And with that, signing off.